the day Joaquin won the championship. His ex-girlfriend, whom he had broken up with years ago, posted a long caption on Instagram. She reminisced about all the little moments they'd shared over the years. For a while, the entire internet was shipping them again, screaming for a broken mirror to be mended. But no one knew that I, his current girlfriend, had been waiting for him at the base until 2 a.m. When I called him, he rubbed his temples and said, "Don't bother me, Melissa. I don't have time to entertain you." I clutched the custom keyboard I wanted to give him, but in the end, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to stay. Years later, he was dethroned by a rising star. The young champion wrapped his arm around my shoulder and smiled at me, right in front of Joaquin. "Meli, back then my aim wasn't as good as his, so you didn't like me. But now, his gun isn't as hard as mine. Wanna find out for yourself?" Chapter 1. So the blogger really dated Joaquin? Oh my god. She made him lemon candies to help him quit smoking, and he ended up pulling her by the collar and kissing her? This is straight out of a romance novel. So sweet. I'm begging for a reunion. There were no lights on in the base that night. I scrolled through every single comment under that Instagram post. Then I sent Joaquin a message. "Don't you think it's time you clarified that I'm your actual girlfriend?" Half an hour later, he replied, "Too lazy to post on Instagram." Another half an hour passed, and he sent a second message. "Why are you even reading those random rumors online?" I set my phone face down on the coffee table inside. There was a time I dreamed of being Joaquin's girlfriend, but after actually getting together with him, I realized dating someone who's worshipped like a god isn't nearly as dreamy as it seems. Chapter 2. When I was 17, a childhood friend took me to my very first live esports tournament. To this day, I still remember that roaring cheer when the match was won, and the commentators' excited praise. So tell me, who could possibly forget Joaquin? A miracle in esports history, the only true hope of CNFPS. Unmatched viewing experience, total domination, unprecedented and unrepeatable. Back then, Joaquin charmed everyone, men, women, the elderly. Even dogs passing by might fall for him. I liked him for 5 whole years. But I wasn't like all those other girls who came and went like schools of fish. I really wanted to win him over. So I majored in esports management in college, and eventually joined his team's club. The first time I met him, I stepped in front of him. "Hi, I'm Melissa." He glanced at me for a few seconds, then brushed past me with his coffee. "Move." He was as cold and aloof as the genius he played on screen. Later I learned he was in an especially bad mood that week. He had just broken up with his first love. But I was young then. I didn't know how to give up. Everyone in the club knew I was chasing him. Even the coach joked, "Joaquin, just give in already. They say it's easy for girls to chase guys, like a thin veil between them. Why does it feel like Melissa's hitting a brick wall with you?" Joaquin, expression flat as he watched game footage, finally looked up and pulled out a smirk that wasn't quite a smile. "Melissa, what do you like about me? I'll change it right away." Chapter 3. I said, "What I like about you is that you don't like me." He was speechless and casually tossed a pillow at me. But as they say, feelings grow over time. Water can wear through stone. I kept showing up for him with a smile for what felt like forever. He stayed cold, distant, and barely responded. Until one day, after the team won a match, we all went to karaoke. Everyone was teasing me to do a love duet with the young support player. Suddenly, Joaquin stood up and yanked me out into the hallway. He looked down at me, eyes dark. "You still like me?" "Who wouldn't like you, Joaquin?" I answered honestly. With his insane skills came a terrifyingly massive fanbase. Every FPS player had at least a few of his photos on their hard drive. He was one accidental death away from becoming a literal legend. That day, he stared at me for a few seconds, then leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. "Then don't sing love songs with other people anymore. Be my girlfriend." Chapter 4. Being with Joaquin was like this. Except for people in the club and the esports circle, we never made our relationship public. Whether to go public or not was always his call. But sometimes I couldn't help minding it a little. When I did, he'd just pull me into his arms. What's the point of putting ourselves out in the public eye? You really want people to recognize you buying groceries and ask if you're my girlfriend? He wasn't wrong. I was just a regular person. And no one knew what would happen if his legion of fangirls found out. But on the day he won the championship, his ex-girlfriend posted a long sentimental note. Joaquin and I met in 2009. Seeing him win today made me strangely emotional. The boy who stayed by my side when we were young, he's all grown up now. He had stomach issues, sometimes he'd leave a cup of warm milk by the bed. That boy who used to act all clingy and ask for my attention. He's gone. I guess I'm just reminiscing. Joaquin and I. We've long since passed the point of no return. The post was by a famous female caster who just returned from studying abroad. The comments on Instagram were all hype. Aw, please get back together. Ugh, I need a reconciliation arc so bad. Please, goddess. Get back with Joaquin. I'll gladly call you my one and only sister-in-law. I felt a strange discomfort in my chest and turned off my screen. The door behind me opened. It was the guys coming back from their championship celebration. Joaquin, still in his black tactical jacket, raised an eyebrow and said lazily, "What are you sulking about? Not going to sleep?" He knew everything, but never offered a single explanation. Chapter 5. Joaquin. There's something I want to talk to you about. It was already 2 p.m. when Joaquin came out of his room. I hadn't slept all night. I stood in front of him, blocking his path. He squinted at me. His loose t-shirt hung casually on him. Water still dripping from his face, probably from a quick wash he hadn't bothered to towel off properly. Even like that, he still looked annoyingly good. Talk later, he said. I have a stream this afternoon. He brushed past me without even a glance. Joaquin started streaming right after his championship win. His viewership was through the roof. But what I hadn't expected was, he actually went live with his ex-girlfriend. Joaquin, I kinda suck at this game. Don't yell at me, okay? Her voice was soft and sweet. Joaquin just gave a quiet mm. The comment section exploded. So cute. So cute. So cute. Joaquin, bro, you're talking all soft when you play with her, huh? I don't even know what kind of masochistic mindset kept me watching that stream. Everyone knows Joaquin has a short fuse when gaming. His god-tier reflexes meant zero patience for teammates who couldn't keep up. I still remember the first time he played his main game with me. He lost his temper. Aim your crosshair at the target and shoot. Is that hard? Did you even shoot? I mean on your monitor. Melissa, if you're this bad, don't ask me to carry you. But this girl? She was actually worse than I had been. She died on sight, constantly feeding the enemy team. Joaquin, I just got back from overseas. I'm not really good at games yet. Are you mad at me? Because Joaquin hadn't said a word. She asked timidly during the break. And right as the chat was spamming, she's literally bottom tier. Joaquin's totally pissed. Has he ever played with someone this trash before? The usually silent man unmuted. No, that was my bad. If we didn't win, it's because I suck, not you. In that moment, the chat exploded. Huh? Did Joaquin just lose his mind? If Joaquin says he's bad, who even dares to call themselves good anymore? He must be in love with her. I'm gonna die from sweetness. Joaquin, when are you two going official already? I just sat there, frozen, my heart aching with a dull tightness. So, he could be gentle with a girl, so he wasn't this harsh with everyone. When I first joined the club, the coach once told me Joaquin's first love meant a lot to him. I'd only heard bits and pieces, but apparently, he'd once threatened to quit the club just to follow her overseas, so it was really that important to him. I shut off the stream and walked to the training room, standing outside the glass window, watching him from afar. I had liked him for so long. He was my teenage idol, my entire coming-of-age devotion. Back then, I thought if I could ever become his girlfriend, I'd laugh in my sleep. But now, I think I finally understood. The Joaquin that fans worshipped, who moved people to tears with his performance on stage. That wasn't the same man standing in front of me. This one? He was the guy who ignored his own girlfriend. Chapter 6. Joaquin didn't finish streaming until around 6 or 7 in the evening. I had been waiting outside the training room the whole time. When he opened the door and saw me, he rubbed his temples. What is it now? Do you have to be like this? You want a public statement from me, right? I'll eat first. Then edit a post on Instagram. I'll write that you're my official girlfriend. Satisfied? He leaned down a bit, face coming closer to mine. Then he smiled. Been crying? Melissa, aren't you ashamed of yourself? His voice carried a teasing tone. I couldn't even tell if he was trying to comfort me or mock me. I took a deep breath, looked him straight in the eye. No need for a post. Let's break up. He froze. For a moment, he looked genuinely confused. What did you say? I repeated, word for word. I said, let's break up. Joaquin. Chapter 7. His black eyes just stared straight into mine. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. God knows my heart felt like it was being clenched in someone's fist. But I refused to show a single crack in front of him. He let out a dry chuckle. Is it April Fool's or something, Melissa? I clutched his sleeve and started explaining. No, I really want to break up. He yanked his arm out of my grasp. His eyes, always calm like deep water, now surged with fury. Fine, then let's break up. He grabbed his keyboard and walked right past me, never looking back. That's the kind of person Joaquin is. When I made up my mind to end things with him, I already knew exactly how he'd respond. The only person he might ever bow his head for is probably still that first love he's never let go of. Chapter 8. Later that night, I passed by the dining hall. I heard arguing. Looking over, I realized it was Joaquin and the support player from the team. The support was a young guy with dyed white hair. Right now, he was grabbing Joaquin's wrist, stopping him from throwing something in the trash. No matter what, this was custom made by Melissa, right? If she saw her boyfriend tossing a gift she poured her heart into like this, she'd be heartbroken. Man, Joaquin's face was twisted with frustration. But when he saw me, his eyes turned sharp and mocking. Boyfriend? Go ahead. Ask her, am I still her boyfriend? Everyone turned to look at me. I lowered my eyes and finally saw what they were struggling over. The keyboard. The custom-made keyboard I had someone design specifically to celebrate his championship. It was about to end up in the trash. I looked up, trying my best to keep my voice calm. Yes, we broke up. The moment I said that, it felt like the whole room took a breath. Of course, everyone in the club probably knew how long I had pursued Joaquin, how much thought and effort I had poured into it. Melissa, the support looked awkward, unsure whether to let go or keep holding on, totally lost. Heh, Joaquin, on the other hand, let out a loud, cutting laugh. You heard her, right? I got dumped. Fuck sake. This is ridiculous. So damn annoying. The keyboard, still in its packaging, was tossed into the trash. The man in the black t-shirt didn't even look back. I stared at the keyboard lying there in the garbage. On the bottom edge, a small line of gold-stamped text gleamed, Joaquin's in-game ID. I remembered the afternoon before he left for the championship match. He pulled me into his arms. Babe, my keyboard's almost busted. Can you get me a new one? He said it like a joke, like something casual, but I took it to heart. Maybe all these years of love I had thrown myself into was just like that keyboard now lying in the trash, utterly worthless in his eyes. Chapter 9. These past few days, Joaquin's first love, the returning caster named Ruby, had been coming to the team base a lot. Apparently, she was starting her own channel and used filming vlogs as a reason to livestream from the base, interacting with the pro players there. Wow, Joaquin's keyboard. Wow, Joaquin's mouse. Wow, Joaquin's handsome face. The cheerful girl turned the camera toward him, catching Joaquin sitting in his gaming chair. The man, who had been focused intently on the screen, finally lost patience. He reached out and covered the camera lens with his hand. Stop bugging me while I'm gaming, okay? His words were harsh, but the tone, indulgent, less like scolding and more like teasing. By then, the comment feed was already exploding. My favorite couple duo is back streaming again. Is this the same Joaquin I know? What's with the soft tone? Love really does make people blind. It felt like the entire esports world was shipping them now. Watching all this unfold, I couldn't help but remember what it was like when I was still with Joaquin. I used to stick to him like glue sometimes, too, but every time, he'd push me away with that signature cold attitude. Melissa, you're too hyper. Don't bother me during training. Don't you think you're kind of annoying when you chirp on and on? I like quiet. Back then, I naively thought that was just part of his personality. So I started toning myself down, forcing myself to act calm and quiet, to not be so loud or cheerful. I thought that maybe, just maybe, he'd notice me a little more. Now, I finally understand. It wasn't that he didn't like cheerful girls. He just didn't like me being cheerful. Chapter 10. I was eating alone in the base cafeteria. Just as I put the last piece of broccoli into my mouth, a man in black sat down across from me. Seeing him made my heart ache in a way I couldn't explain, like a half-healed wound being ripped wide open again. It was ironic. I used to chase him down, always the one to run over and sit beside him at lunch. He never once came looking for me. And now, here he was. His dark eyes locked onto mine, like they were trying to pull me in. You're requesting a transfer to another division? I nodded. Yes, it was too hard to stay and work around Joaquin. Better to leave and not see, not feel. Is it really necessary? He glanced down, and without hesitation, used his chopsticks to eat the green peppers I had left on my plate. That was one of Joaquin's good habits. He wasn't picky. When we were together, he'd always finish off my leftovers without a second thought. But now, we weren't together anymore. I started to gather my tray, just about to say something, when a well-groomed, pretty girl sat down next to him. It was Ruby, the caster. She smiled politely and reached out her hand toward me. Hi there. I'm Ruby. I heard you're Joaquin's ex-girlfriend? Chapter 11. I stared at her, my face expressionless, but she seemed to think she had caught me off guard and started chattering nonstop. Girl, you're so pretty. Oh no. Why did you break up with Joaquin? It's not because of me, is it? Joaquin and I are literally just friends. I swear. Ruby had been playing the cute and carefree persona for years now. I'd heard she calls half the pro players in the scene her bros, but I couldn't help but feel like her whole body was practically leaning into Joaquin's. Joaquin just looks cold on the outside, she said casually, resting her arm naturally on his shoulder. But he's actually so sweet to his girlfriend. When we were together, he wouldn't let me lift a finger. Like, she pointed at the orange on my tray. Even with oranges like that, he'd always peel them for me first, right? Isn't that true, Joaquin? She nudged him playfully with her shoulder. The man stared at her, face blank. How long are you planning to keep your leg on mine? So, apparently, out of my line of sight, Ruby had rested her leg on Joaquin's thigh. Oops, she said. I'm just used to it. That's how I am with all my friends. Ruby gave me a sheepish smile. I stared at them, expressionless. But their intimacy, casual as it seemed, still stung my eyes. Turns out, what I once wanted so badly and never got, Ruby got effortlessly. I grabbed my tray and turned to leave, but only I knew. My hand was shaking. I could barely hold the tray steady. Behind me, their voices drifted over. Sigh. Joaquin, did I say something wrong again? Ruby's voice was soft, full of fake guilt. Then came Joaquin's cold tone. Don't mind her. She's crazy. Chapter 12. The next day, I still had to lead the team to a joint match with theirs. When I boarded the team van, the only empty seat left was beside Joaquin. I had no choice but to sit next to him. He was leaning back with his eyes closed and headphones on. The space in the van was tight, our shoulders nearly touched. I sighed quietly, reminding myself, just endure a little longer until the transfer goes through. The team's support player, probably trying to lighten the mood, turned to the teammate next to him. What match are you watching? Oh, one from the day before yesterday. The player's name is Hugh. He's an assault type. Been on fire lately. For real. He's got a growing fanbase too. Might even be catching up to Joaquin's level of popularity. The conversation had turned to Joaquin, who still had his eyes closed, showing no reaction. But I could feel it. He was leaning into me. The van was small to begin with, and when we hit a sharp turn, his head landed right on my shoulder. There was a faint scent of freesia on him, a common women's fragrance. I was pretty sure I'd smelled it on Ruby yesterday. Word had it she stopped by the base that morning, just to cheer him on. But the van had straightened out again, and Joaquin still hadn't moved. His head was still resting against me. I turned to push him off, only to find his breathing light and even. Maybe he was asleep, maybe he wasn't. Either way, I wasn't going to play along with this test of his. I gently lifted his head and turned to the support player in front. Let's swap seats. It was a small shuttle van, so changing seats made quite a scene. But I didn't care if he woke up or not. I swapped seats with the support and sat down without hesitation. Just as I settled in, I happened to glance up at the rearview mirror. His eyes were open. Those dark eyes, like a deep, stormy pool, were staring straight at me, rage swirling just beneath the surface. Chapter 13. After our team got into position, I had to handle all the on-site coordination. By the time I was finally done, the support player came rushing toward me, clearly flustered. Joaquin's missing. The match is about to start and no one can find him. I sighed and told the team to return to the lounge while I went looking. I asked around in several places, no one had seen him. Just as I was about to push open a door, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist. Where were you? Do you even know how long I've been looking for you? In the hallway. I stared at the man who'd just vanished like smoke all day. He lowered his eyes and then suddenly let out a soft laugh. Were you worried about me? I didn't understand how his brain worked anymore. Enough. Get back to the lounge already. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to get him back to the team. But he grabbed my wrist again. Harder this time. What now? Are you? Before I could finish, he suddenly pinned me against the wall. He was nearly 6 feet 3 inches when he looked down. His shadow swallowed me whole. Then I heard him say, clearly and firmly, I want to get back together with you. Coming from Joaquin, those words sounded almost absurd. You were the one who agreed to the breakup. Yeah, well, I changed my mind. But I didn't. I replied, I'll change, whatever you want. I'll change. He cut me off. Still gripping my wrist tightly, he stepped closer. His grip started to hurt. Melissa, do you know how miserable I've been these past few days? Don't make me feel worse, okay? You've made your point. Enough with the drama. Come on, let's get back together. Chapter 14. I closed my eyes. He said he'd been miserable these days. Miserable doing what? Flirting with streamers? Letting the internet spin whatever story it wanted? There was a time when I would have dreamed of Joaquin trying to coax me back like this. But now? Now I knew better. If I gave in because I felt weak for just one moment, I'd be the one suffering all over again. Chapter 15. I pushed Joaquin away. The support player finally found him and dragged him back to the lounge. Today's match was against the team of that player they had discussed in the van, Hugh. There wasn't much suspense. Joaquin's level in this game was near divine. His skill exceeded even other top players by a mile. And in today's match, it showed. Joaquin basically carried the game solo. No teamwork. He still barely secured the win. But afterward, the coach kept sighing. A team with no coordination is doomed. I didn't really understand the tactical side of it. When the players went to get interviewed, I headed backstage to handle logistics. That's where I saw someone sitting quietly, alone, perched on top of a suitcase. He looked completely out of place, lonely, even. Chapter 16. Hugh. How many times had he already lost to Joaquin? They were both assault players, with somewhat similar styles. The media naturally loved comparing the two. I looked at the young man sitting there all alone, and something in my chest loosened. What's wrong? Wins and losses are part of the game. I walked up to him and said softly. When he saw me, the sorrow in his eyes seemed to ripple like a sky full of stars. I'm not sad. I'm just not willing to accept it. Meli, if I were better than Joaquin, would you have joined my team and become my assistant? The truth was, most people didn't know this. I had known this newly rising assault player for a long time. After all, the childhood friend who took me to watch Joaquin's first live match when I was 14 was Hugh. But I couldn't answer his question, because I didn't fall for Joaquin after studying esports. I studied esports because I fell for Joaquin. Maybe sensing what I couldn't say, Hugh suddenly smiled. He reached out and tugged gently at my sleeve. I get it, Meli. I've watched you chase after Joaquin all this time, haven't I? But now, it was all over. That was the sentence I finished silently in my heart. While I was talking to Hugh, Joaquin, still in his team uniform, walked into the backstage area with another girl. Chapter 17. The air conditioning in the arena was running a bit strong. I saw that Ruby, the caster, was wearing Joaquin's team jacket. For a moment, my heart twisted with complicated emotions. Joaquin already looked upset. But the moment he saw me standing in front of Hugh, our wrists lightly touching, the look on his face turned into stormy rage. He grabbed Ruby's wrist and stormed off with her. That was just like him, moody and unpredictable. I didn't bother reacting. Hugh's teammate came over and called him away. I got up to leave too, but a staff member stopped me. Melissa, Joaquin said he needs to see you. He's in the makeup room. Chapter 18. I don't know who designed this venue, but it was like a maze. I had to wind around several corners before I finally found the place. Before I even pushed the door open, I heard voices inside. Joaquin, did your girlfriend really break up with you because of me? The girl's voice was soft and teasing. I break up, and you're happy about that? Joaquin's voice came next, cold, distant, like a blade of ice. Well, I wouldn't say I'm happy, Joaquin, it's just that I've never been good at hiding how I feel about you. Now that you two are over, if I smiled, I'd look kind of shameless, wouldn't I? I froze at the door. So this is why Joaquin asked me here, to hear this? I thought he'd already twisted the knife deep enough into my chest. But the moment I opened the door just a crack, before it even swung all the way open, I saw it. He was holding her hand, her cheeks were flushed. And then, without a word, he kissed her, forcefully. No shame in that. I shut the door. Whether they kissed tenderly or tore at each other with passion afterward, it had nothing to do with me anymore. I walked back with numb steps. To say I felt nothing would be a lie. I'd loved Joaquin for years. He was the person I poured my entire youth into. Once, I thought he was so dazzling that I'd gladly be the dust that sparkled in his light. But now I understood. He was nothing but a hollow idol, and all those years of love were just empty words on a page. As I walked back, still dazed, some of the players looked at me in concern. Melissa, did you find Joaquin? I paused, just about to say, don't interrupt their happy little love story, when Ruby suddenly walked past me from behind. The same Ruby who had just been kissed by Joaquin and looked so blissful, was now crying. Mascara streaked across her cheeks. She threw Joaquin's team jacket in my face, then glared at me, and stomped away in her heels. Everyone stood frozen for a full minute, until Joaquin walked over, hands in his pockets, his face black with fury. He reached out, snatched the jacket from my arms, and said nothing. Chapter 19. From that moment on, Joaquin and I had no further contact. I blocked him on WeChat and phone, though honestly, I didn't think he would reach out anyway. I handed in my resignation to the club owner. After everything that had happened with Joaquin, staying at the club was no longer an option. Back when I just wanted to see Joaquin anytime I wanted. I'd even rented an apartment right next to the team's building. Now, as I moved my things out piece by piece, it felt like I was being forced to rewatch a reel of painful memories. When I really thought about it, I had never truly been happy during our time together. It had always been me pouring my heart out, making all the effort. Sometimes he responded, sometimes he didn't. I remembered learning to cook, despite never having cooked a day in my life, just so he wouldn't eat takeout all the time. I ended up with new burns and cuts on my hands. He never noticed. I remembered switching out my favorite bright floral skirts for muted tones, just to suit his taste. I remembered practicing my shooting skills for hours on end so I wouldn't be called trash in his games, only to still be dismissed as not good enough. He never really saw me, never once looked back. He was used to sitting on that high throne, basking in the worship of others. He assumed I'd never leave him, that I never could. Lying on the sofa was a human-sized plush toy, the only thing Joaquin had ever won for me. A ridiculously ugly giraffe. I picked it up, ready to toss it in the dumpster, and that's when I saw him, standing there with his hands in his pockets. You're really throwing it away? Took me forever to win that one. Joaquin, dressed in all black, stared straight at me. He looked different, like a man going through something. Unshaven, disheveled, bloodshot eyes. Why'd you quit? Was transferring to another division not enough? You had to go and resign completely? You had to make it so I'll never see you again? So I miss you to the point of losing my mind? He stood in front of me, stubborn as ever, throwing these words at me like accusations. It was strange. I was the one who'd been hurt, trampled on, yet now he looked like the one being wronged. We broke up. It's that simple. Stop bothering me. I turned and walked away, only to feel him yank my wrist hard. Why'd you break up with me? Didn't you like me? Sunlight flickered in his pupils. For a second, he really did look lost. I don't like you anymore, I said. His mouth opened slightly, stunned. Why? He asked. Why? Joaquin, you knew I posted those captions on social media just for you. You knew when you yelled at me, I couldn't eat all day. You definitely knew I cried over you until dawn. Missing you so much I thought I'd lose my mind. You never turned around, not once. So now, me walking away, wasn't that perfectly fair? I gave him a faint smile. If I said it all out loud, it would sound pathetic, like I still couldn't let go. No, I'd let him wonder for the rest of his life. I turned to leave without hesitation, but he grabbed my wrist again. Hard this time. Ugh, let go. You. I never imagined he'd actually use force on me. I used to fantasize about being physically close to Joaquin, but he was always cold. Like ice, he never showed any desire. Even our most intimate moments were just a dry kiss on the lips. Now, his body burned hot, his eyes brimming with suppressed hunger. Joaquin, I struggled. Hard. But I had overestimated myself. The strength gap between me and a grown man was too big. Just when I started to feel truly hopeless, dragged by him, unable to resist, someone yanked me back. Behind them. So this is what the world's #1 assault player really is? Maybe I should record this, show your fangirls who cry over you just how gentle you really are. A teenage boy stepped between us, shielding me, staring down Joaquin with a cold expression. I blinked in surprise, then caught sight of his navy and black team uniform. There was only one team that wore that design. Hugh's team. Chapter 20. I didn't know when he'd arrived, or how much he had witnessed. Joaquin stared at me hiding behind Hugh. And suddenly, he laughed. What? Couldn't wait to get rid of me because you already had someone else lined up? Melissa. This guy, he's Hugh, right? Some useless kid who's been in the scene 2 years with no real progress. That's the kind of guy you're into now? I thought he'd lost his mind. He felt like a stranger to me now, and all I wanted was to stay far away. But as he passed me, he looked me right in the eyes. Melissa, you're mine. I won't let anyone take you from me, got it? And with that, he walked away, leaving me and Hugh standing there in silence. I felt a bit dazed, partly because Hugh had once again witnessed one of my lowest moments, and partly because every encounter with Joaquin now left me mentally drained. Meli, moving out. Beside me, that familiar voice brought me back to earth. He rolled up his sleeves, hands still in his pockets, and smiled. Let me help you. Chapter 21. Hugh had taken time off from his team just to help me move. Honestly, we used to be super close, but in recent years, my relationship with Joaquin had pulled us apart. Now, he was helping me sort my things just the way I liked them, neatly, efficiently, with care. Since we were kids, this childhood friend who was 2 years younger had always looked after me. I stood on the balcony, hosing down the floor one last time. For some reason, a memory popped up. One day Joaquin and I stood here too. Maybe the sunset was nice. That was the only time he had ever kissed me first. I had tugged his sleeve and asked if he liked me. He looked at me but said nothing. I figured, back then, maybe his mind was filled with thoughts of that first love living overseas. Meli, you're still not happy. Hugh's voice came suddenly from beside me. He was leaning against the same balcony railing. Is breaking up with him really that painful? How strange. He was smiling, but Hugh's smile looked heartbreakingly sad. It's not sadness, Hugh. It's just frustration. After loving someone for so many years, I finally realized what kind of person he really is. And I feel like such an idiot for waiting on him all this time. You wouldn't get it. You've never been in love. When are you going to get a girlfriend? Huh? I saw the rumors online, something about you and some girl in Nantong. I smiled, trying to steer the conversation into something lighter. But then, he stared at me intently. Meli, I already like someone. Oh, Hugh had someone he liked. I froze for a second. Strangely, a wave of melancholy washed over me. Everyone else was moving forward. Only I was still stuck in place. But seeing the look on my face, he chuckled. What's with that? Oh, Melissa. He lowered his voice and called me by my full name. The evening glow melted into his dark eyes, quiet, intense, and silently pulling me in. You don't understand anything at all. Chapter 22. After resigning from the club, I finally had time to help out at my family's company. Only, when I arrived at the entrance of a new team base, I turned and stared at my brother. You're kidding, right? The man in a full suit shrugged nonchalantly. I didn't tell you I bought an esports club? You studied esports management, didn't you? Isn't it perfectly logical for you to help manage one? Okay, I did know my brother had acquired a club. What no one told me was, it was the one Hugh played for. My brother clapped me on the shoulder, grinning like a fox. Maybe you'll help me raise the next world champion. Huh? And come on, you know Hugh. He's in demand right now. You should be thanking me. I didn't know why, but my brother seemed way too invested in shipping me with Hugh. I sighed and followed him into the base, dragging my suitcase along. As we passed the break room, I suddenly heard an excited female voice. Seriously, why won't you say yes to my confession? Hugh, you big idiot. You're as dense as a rock, so damn frustrating. A girl with twin ponytails trailed behind him, while the boy, holding a cup of coffee, wore an utterly blank expression. I've told you more than once, I already like someone. I'm not dense, I'm very smart, so could you please stop following me around? Hugh really was pretty popular, just like my brother said. I stood there watching with mild amusement, sipping my coffee, until he noticed me. Without missing a beat, he walked over and took my suitcase from my hand. You're here? Your room's ready. Come with me. He completely ignored the girl beside him the whole time. She looked visibly upset and pouted slightly. Strangely, watching this scene suddenly reminded me of myself. Back when I was chasing Joaquin, once we got into the elevator, I couldn't help but speak up. You could be a little nicer to her, you know? And maybe give it a try, you might end up liking her. Sometimes the best thing is what's right in front of you. I was abruptly pushed against the elevator wall. Hugh leaned in, eyes lowered, his gaze a little darker than usual. Looks like you really don't know who I like. Meli. For a second, I had a wild, irrational feeling, like he was about to say something that would completely upend my worldview. But before he could speak, the elevator doors opened. My brother was standing there with a raised eyebrow, looking amused. Am I interrupting something? Well, yeah, you interrupted my gossip moment. But I didn't say that out loud. I just dragged my suitcase out of the elevator like nothing happened, and so I didn't notice. Behind me, Hugh lowered his gaze and smiled softly, eyes full of quiet, aching disappointment. Chapter 23. The days I arrived happened to fall during the off-season, so the base was fairly quiet, which gave me time to get used to the place. The girl who had been chasing Hugh the other day, her name was Zara, turned out to be the team's assistant. Since we were the only two women in the whole base, we bonded pretty quickly. She liked Hugh. I told her she had good taste. Hugh was a decent guy. Not like, well, a certain trash person I used to know. But he's so cold to me. She pouted. I send him 10 messages, and he replies to one, just to tell me not to bother him. Hugh, cold? In my memory, he was always chasing me around calling me Meli, like a little sun that never dimmed. Just like now, he walked over holding 2 ice creams and asked if I wanted to play a game. Zara quickly leaned in. What about mine? Where's my ice cream? Hugh replied flatly. Who are you? Zara clutched her chest dramatically, like she'd been mortally wounded. I couldn't help laughing. I took one of the cones from Hugh's hand and decided to play matchmaker a little. Why don't you two share the other one? Hugh froze, those dark eyes staring at me. There was always something in the way he looked at me, like I'd just hurt him somehow. Like I was the one bullying him. But aside from pushing him into a lotus pond as kids, locking him in the outhouse, and blaming him for my pranks, I swear, I haven't bullied him recently. Then Hugh pressed his lips together and gently pulled Zara by the hand toward the balcony. I thought he'd finally taken my advice and was ready to give things a try with her. Felt kinda proud, honestly. But half an hour later, they came back. Zara's eyes were red, and she wouldn't even look at me. I was speechless. Did they crash and burn? Hugh sat next to me, lowered his gaze, and smiled slightly. Meli, stop overthinking it. There's no way you're going to convince me to date anyone else. I rolled my eyes. Fine, do whatever you want. Chapter 24. During the off-season, aside from regular training, Hugh spent most of his time asking me to game with him. It took me a while to realize. He was only doing it because he could tell I'd been upset those days. Hugh was quiet when he played. He never yelled at me when I couldn't hit anything. He'd take me to admire in-game scenery instead of picking fights just to grab loot. He said, "Melissa, if you don't like FPS games, we don't have to play them." So he played games with me he'd never even touched before, management sims. Life builders. We turned a deserted little island into a thriving resort. We watched stars in the in-game night sky, fished deep-sea creatures we'd never caught before. He wore hideous outfits on purpose just to make me laugh. Idiot. I chuckled. The TV screen lit up his eyes, reflecting shimmering light, like a sky full of stars, right in his gaze. He said, "Meli, you finally smiled. You're so much prettier when you smile." My laughter caught in my throat. I stopped suddenly and just stared at him. For a moment, it felt like someone had squeezed my heart. Hard. He never cared how bad I was at games. He never scolded me for being slow. With Joaquin, I was always walking on eggshells. But with Hugh, I had forgotten. I had forgotten how fun games could be when I was with someone who actually made me feel happy. Chapter 25. This year's postseason would determine which teams from China would qualify for the World Championship. Hugh's team was ranked mid to upper tier in the league. Still, the outlook wasn't great. Even Joaquin's team, ranked number 1 in the league, hadn't placed within the top 20 at Worlds in recent years. CNFPS hadn't seen a world champion in a long time, and standing in the way of Hugh and his team was Joaquin's team. "You want to go to Worlds? You think you're worthy?" That's the first thing Joaquin said to our team after arriving at the arena. Hands in his pockets, voice full of scorn. He had always been arrogant, but his skill backed it up. That's why he had so many believers. Esports had always been like this. Being bad is the original sin. "Melissa." As he passed me, Joaquin lowered his voice. "I'm going to crush your little childhood friend, just so you remember whose side you should be on." Suddenly, someone grabbed my wrist, then pulled me behind them. "Ever think about the possibility I might crush you? You bastard." Hugh smiled at him coolly. The match hadn't even started, but the air was already thick with tension. Yet I could feel it. Hugh's hand was trembling. He had been overtraining these past few days. He didn't want to lose. I knew that. But still, that stage, lit with blinding lights, was just like life itself. No one wants to lose, but someone always does. Someone always ends up on the floor. Someone always learns the hard truth. Talent can be an impossible distance away. The gap between Hugh and Joaquin is still one entire hue. That's what a famous caster said after the match. A harsh truth dressed as poetic commentary. If slaying dragons were really that easy, we'd be living in a fairy tale. Game 1, Hugh's team was completely obliterated. Game 2, as the most promising young talent in Chinese FPS, Hugh was crushed by Joaquin again. After the match, Joaquin looked into the camera and said the line that went viral across every platform. "Him? Going to Worlds? He's never going to make it." Backstage, the boy who had run into the restroom had no idea that this would be the start of a long, endless wave of ridicule and mockery. That's the hope of Chinese FPS? What a joke. After Joaquin, we'll never see another champion again. World champ? Please. Joaquin can't even do it. Hugh is such a clown, isn't he? Where'd he get the guts to challenge Joaquin? All I knew was, Hugh ran into the bathroom to throw up. I don't know where I'd heard it, but they say when a person is overwhelmed by despair, their first reaction is to vomit. No one had expected them to lose this badly. The entire team looked defeated, drained of every ounce of spirit. Joaquin strolled backstage, eyes gleaming with mockery. "Melissa," he said, Do you regret breaking up with me now? I shoved him aside, because Hugh had come out of the bathroom. His face was deathly pale, like he might collapse any second. He stumbled into my arms. That was the first time I realized. He was crying. He whispered, "Meli, I'm never going to win. I'm so useless. I thought I could seize the chance. I thought I could take you from him. But me, I'm just not good enough." Chapter 26. Joaquin nearly dismantled an entire team by himself. That's who he is, the king of this game. No one even came out for dinner, except for the support player, who eventually dragged himself out. Sigh. Honestly, we dragged Hugh down too much. No one on our team knows how to lead. You know? He's an entry fragger, and still had to do the shot calling. An entry's job is to focus on pure mechanics. How is he supposed to keep up with everything? The support weakly picked at his food. Hugh must be feeling terrible. He works harder than anyone, but his ending is worse than anyone's. Yeah, this was Hugh's third failed attempt at Worlds. His 20th head-to-head loss against Joaquin. The media called him useless, said putting the future of FPS on his shoulders was a joke. I carried a tray of food to Hugh's room. He didn't open the door. I knocked 2 or 3 times. Still nothing. I stood outside and said, "If you don't open the door now, then don't ever open it for me again." The door cracked open. I slipped inside. The AC in the room was blasting. I stepped in and almost thought I'd entered a freezer. There was someone curled up on the bed, just a fuzzy head poking out. "Are you trying to freeze yourself to death?" I sat at the edge of the bed. He sniffled and said softly, "Sorry. I didn't really think he had anything to apologize to me for. Joaquin is just that strong. In the esports scene, skill is everything, even if he's a jerk. If he's strong, he's a god." Melissa, do you know how I felt that day? I felt like I'm never going to beat him in this life. He's terrifying. Maybe this stupid life of mine was just always meant to be a stupid life. There wasn't even a flicker of light in Hugh's eyes. It's hard to imagine how terrifying Joaquin is. He broke a star player's spirit completely. I held Hugh's shoulder tightly. "You can beat him." He looked up at me for a second. There was a glimmer in his eyes, but then it dimmed again. "Meli, you don't understand. You can beat him. I told you already. You can beat him." Hugh. He froze, cut off 3 times in a row. "I don't understand esports," I said. "But I understand Hugh. Hugh hasn't lost. There's just a tough obstacle in his way. He's just tired, for now. But he knows anything that doesn't kill him will only make him stronger. There's a mountain in front of Hugh, and he said there's no way he's turning back. He said he'll climb that mountain and he'll slap every ignorant idiot who mocked him right in the face. He said one day he'll stand under the spotlight and take back everything that's his. That's the Hugh I know." I looked into his eyes and said, word by word, "Focus. We're going to reach the top." That day, he just stared at me in shock, but in his eyes, sparks reignited. He opened his mouth and asked me, "If I get back up, what are the odds I win?" I said, "There's a 95% chance you'll fail again." He said, "What about the other 5%? To experience an adventure and glory most people will never know." Chapter 27. Joaquin's team made it to Worlds, and all the other domestic teams got to go on break. Hugh's team was no exception. He'd been locking himself in his room training these past few days. After that day, he seemed to be in a slightly better state of mind. But to be honest, I couldn't say for sure. People can only find their way out by themselves. The path he chooses, only he can walk it. One day, he had a long talk with the coach, while I was out on the balcony looking at the night sky. He came and stood beside me. "I've decided to switch to a support role." Hugh and Joaquin were a lot alike, both extremely aggressive entry fraggers. Most of the highlight reels featured players like them, but support players are the ones who clean up fights, cover flanks, and relay information to the whole team. It doesn't sound nearly as cool, and they're often overshadowed by snipers and fraggers. Yet the support is the one irreplaceable soul of any team. Hugh used to be both entry fragger and shot caller, but now, he was giving up the fragger role completely, for the sake of leading. What did that mean? It meant that people online would say he couldn't keep up and had to role swap. It meant his appearances in highlight montages would become rarer. It meant he would no longer be the rising star of entry fraggers, even though in the Western leagues, support players were highly respected. No support from the Chinese region had ever stood out on the world stage. That day in Shanghai, the skies were crystal clear. Disheartened and uncertain, Hugh changed his in-game name to Aries, becoming a support. The internet tore him apart. His team failed to qualify for playoffs. People said he was finished, that was his last moment of glory. Little did they know, the gears of fate had just begun to turn. A dynasty belonging to Hugh, an era that would be etched in the history of CNFPS, was about to unfold. Chapter 28. This year at Worlds, Joaquin's team once again failed to deliver. To be honest, a lot of FPS fans had lost hope. The idea that Asian players just couldn't compete with Western ones in gunplay had become widespread. That same year, viewership for FPS tournaments plummeted. Sponsors pulled out en masse. Many people said that the next year would be the last for Chinese FPS. During the new year, I spent the holiday with Hugh and his teammates. So, what are your New Year's wishes? I asked this group of barely 20-year-old kids. Someone said, obviously, to play well this year. Someone else said, win Worlds. Another said, get noticed and make bank. Only Hugh thought about it for a long while, his sharp nose tucked under his scarf, only his bright eyes peeking out as he looked at me. I want to spend another year with Meli. Everyone let out a groaning chorus. Damn, Captain, you're totally down bad. I give up. I'm outta here. Yeah. Let's leave these two lovebirds to it. So sweet it's killing me. Snowflakes melted into a flurry of white drifting down to earth. The boy's figure danced in the streetlight as he tugged me through the alleyways. Hand in hand. Maybe people are just destined to live in sorrow, because until now, neither Hugh nor I had really succeeded at anything. But in this moment, looking into your eyes, I was happy. And that was enough. Really, it was enough. Chapter 29. The tournament continued into the new year. After a rocky start adapting to his new role, Hugh and his team found their footing fairly quickly, but the gap between them and the top-tier teams was still significant. The turning point came in the second half of the season. Hugh's team began toppling first-tier teams one after another, and when they faced Joaquin's team, they won in a crushing landslide. It was the first time Joaquin had ever lost to Hugh's team, though by then, Hugh was no longer the entry fragger facing off against him. To be honest, that year hadn't gone well for Joaquin. His team's support player left, and with his departure came a major scandal. The legend himself, Joaquin, was revealed to have had a girlfriend all along, and he had been flirting with the female caster Ruby before officially breaking up. Fans were dying to know who his girlfriend was, but no one could guess it was me. To be fair, Joaquin had protected my identity well. In truth, tabloid drama never really hurt a player's career. Even those who forced their girlfriends to get abortions still had plenty of fans. But the one who paid the price was Ruby, the female caster. She lost her job over it. The real issue was that Joaquin's in-game performance became increasingly unstable. One time, he even smashed his keyboard on stage after a match. That day, after a match against Hugh, he came backstage looking for me. He grabbed my wrist and tried to pull me away. What are you doing? Let go of me. There were a lot of people in the lounge. They all rushed over to stop him. But the man, eyes bloodshot, stared at me and rasped, please, don't leave me. I really can't live without you. Later, people said Joaquin had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder with suicidal tendencies. To be honest, I wasn't surprised. Genius is often accompanied by mental instability, and Joaquin had long shown signs of mania. He took half a month off. When he returned to the stage, he was still a beast, slaying gods, crushing legends. Chapter 30. Then came the qualifiers for Worlds. Once again, it was Hugh's team versus Joaquin's. Only this time, Hugh's team was ranked number 1 in the league going into the match. Joaquin, surprised? I've come back from hell. That's what Hugh said to Joaquin before the match. By that time, Hugh had already made most of the domestic audience realize just how critical the support role was. He'd single-handedly redefined the tactical landscape in China. His mastery of clutch situations had become his trademark. A year ago, Joaquin had crushed Hugh 2-0. A year later, Hugh returned the favor. As golden streamers fell, though not from his own head, Joaquin watched as his 4-year championship streak ended. The camera zoomed in on him. The man sitting behind the monitor looked a little lost, as if he didn't understand how he had lost. He watched the boy lift the trophy, just like watching a younger version of himself. Only this time, the one slumped in the gaming chair, defeated and hollow, was him. Chapter 31. After winning the domestic trophy, Hugh was set to represent China at Worlds. Even though they'd made it to Worlds, China's placements in recent years had hovered around the 20s. That basically meant most teams were one and done, eliminated in the group stage. And that was when Joaquin's team still had a huge skill gap over others. Before Hugh's team even flew out, international media released their championship odds. 93%. That number seemed absurd at first glance, but it was a harsh reality. Netizens joked, at this point, their best chances for every other team to get stranded at the airport. But jokes aside, every time Chinese players went abroad to compete, who didn't cheer their lungs out for them? Even if FPS viewership kept declining, because the tournament was held in the UK, match times were brutal for Chinese fans, even if the cheering felt like no one else cared. Let's go, CNFPS. You got this. That chant still echoed in the arena. Maybe that's the meaning of esports. We fall again and again. We get crushed. We get nailed to the wall of shame. But we don't give up. Even if every memory is built on regret, I'll still die fighting to the very end. There's a snippet of in-game voice comms. It was Hugh talking with his teammates. It was their last match in group stage, a make-or-break moment for quarterfinals. They were trailing by a huge margin. The enemy launched an aggressive push, and after their fragger went down, he just laughed bitterly and said, I don't think we can win this. The team comms went silent. Then the sniper added, yeah, making it this far is already. But Hugh cut them off. But what if we win? What if we win? Are we really giving up now? Are we really stopping here? The whole team went quiet for half a minute, and then came an explosion of life. No one wants to lose. No one, right? So let's win. Win with style. Win so hard the enemy respects us. A blind snipe from the sniper. Hugh's flanking shot calls. The fragger's sacrifice. The support's perfect grenade. Together, they pulled off a legendary comeback. That night, the whole arena stood up and cheered for them. For the first time in 6 years, a Chinese team made it into the quarterfinals. And their legend was only beginning. Chapter 32. In quarterfinals, they knocked a legendary Western team off the throne. In semi-finals, they crushed the reigning world champions with a decisive score. It had been so long since anyone dared to dream of their home team making it past semis. More and more people were waking up at absurd hours to watch the matches. More and more players reopened the FPS game they hadn't touched in years. Even fans overseas began to support Hugh and his squad. Because who doesn't want to witness the rise of a true underdog legend? Who doesn't want to see an old king dethroned? Their cheers grew louder, wider, more unstoppable, and so on the day of the grand finals, the entire stadium roared with their names. Chapter 33. The final team Hugh and his squad had to face was an undefeated Western powerhouse. Unlike their underdog status, this Western team was a true titan, an all-time favorite to win it all. Pre-match predictions? Hugh's team was still only given a 17% chance of victory. And yet, the entire arena cheered their names. It was like a dragon-slaying tale. Who doesn't want to witness the birth of a hero? But reality came down on them like a slap to the face. In Game 1, the Western team secured a dominant, easy win. The stadium fell into suffocating silence. Because this wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life. How could an underdog defeat the old kings just like that? How could a group of young players outplay a battle-hardened, championship-tier Western roster? But just when the mood had sunk too low, a voice suddenly rang out from the audience. Don't give up. Keep fighting. A middle-aged man's shout echoed across the stadium. Everyone knew this might just be a dream. But still, they wanted the dream to go on. And so, the cheers started again and grew louder. Some had brought national flags with them. Those scattered stars lit a fire that swept across the crowd. Chapter 34. Years later, someone once asked me what esports means. I always think back to those matches Hugh and his team played in London. Fighting when you know the odds are against you. Even if the world is falling apart, you push forward without hesitation. Esports is filled with people who have tasted nothing but disappointment. But there will always be those who rise, one after another, to ignite the flame again. They said Hugh only had a 0.93% chance of winning, but 5 young men turned that 0.93% into 100%. At last, golden confetti rained down, and they held the trophy that belonged to them only to them. Some fans sat up in bed at midnight, stifling screams so they wouldn't wake their roommates. Some flooded online forums, stacking post after post about what this win meant. Some couldn't sleep at all, so they dragged friends out to the nearest net cafe to play that old game again. A year ago, Hugh was lost and unsure. A year later, he stood atop the greatest stage in the world of competitive gaming. So never give up, ever. I stood in the audience, watching them being interviewed on stage. The usually goofy sniper? He cried. 5 young men stood on that stage, full of pride and fire. But only I knew that one of them had once been so devastated by a loss that he vomited alone in a bathroom. That one of them trained deep into the night, refusing to rest. That one of them destroyed 5 keyboards during practice. That one of them had once cried his heart out in a dark, empty training room. Then came the final words of their fragger. His voice choked. The stage lights around him shimmered like stars. It's been such a hard journey. It really has. Such a hard journey. Epilogue. After all the roaring cheers died down, the team sat quietly in the minibus. They looked exhausted. After all, it had been back-to-back, fan photos, autographs, post-match dinners. Those Western players were really something, loud, chaotic, and despite the language barrier, still insisted on playing games together. I sat next to Hugh. He looked completely worn out, his head resting against my shoulder. His thick lashes drooped low. It made me feel guilty about pushing him away. Then he started getting bold. His head wasn't enough, now his whole body was leaning into me. I finally couldn't take it and nudged him. What's wrong, Meli? He blinked at me, pitifully. I said, don't sleep on me. But I'm so tired. I thought winning the championship would finally let me sleep like a rock, but turns out I can't even sleep right. The way he said it made me feel a little guilty, so I gave in, letting my shoulder stay there for him. Fine, just rest, okay? He chuckled. Can I sleep on any part of Meli? Huh? I suspected he was flirting shamelessly, but had no proof. Hugh, you're not even sleepy, are you? He laughed, his eyes sparkling like a sky full of stars. I'm just really happy, Meli. He leaned in closer, looked into my eyes, and said softly, I'm happy we won, but I'm even happier that you were by my side. It wasn't me who saved you, it was you who saved me. You're the one who told me Hugh never lost. He smiled, and because he smiled, I smiled too. I looked back at him. Seriously, Hugh, you're the one who won, and the rest of your life should be the same way. You need to always remind yourself, what if I win? Even if life is a chaotic, tangled mess, you still have to live your own kind of brilliance. Be a seed. Even if life tries to bury me, I will grow. Story 2. I liked Oliver from the age of 18 to 22. During those years, the biggest entertainment in the social circles of Beijing was watching me chase after him and do all kinds of foolish things for him. Later, a friend asked him, if you didn't like her, why didn't you just reject her outright? Oliver shrugged casually and said with a smile, I kept her around for entertainment. It felt like from that day onward, the tidal wave of love I had for him suddenly receded. I stopped clinging to him, took off the necklace he had given me, and gradually became much quieter. When there were rumors about him and someone else, I just smiled and let it go. When he brought a new girlfriend to parties, I no longer got jealous or caused a scene. Then one day, he said he was really getting married and handed me the invitation in person. Everyone was waiting for me to lose control, to fall apart in regret. Even his closest friend, Bruno, glared at me and demanded, are you really not going to go after him? I furrowed my brows, my voice trembling and breaking as I replied, Bruno, can you ask me that question after you get off me? Chapter 1. The first time Oliver brought a date to a gathering of friends. It had been 3 months since our last meeting. That was practically a miracle in our circle. A friend leaned in, whispering words of comfort. Selena, if you can't take it later, just find an excuse to leave, and don't make a scene, okay? It's someone's birthday today. I smiled but said nothing. Oliver's new girlfriend was beautiful and well-matched with him. When the two of them walked in hand, everyone instinctively glanced at me. I just sat there quietly, a faint smile fixed on my face the whole time. Let me introduce my girlfriend, Lily, Oliver said, emphasizing the words my girlfriend as his gaze briefly swept over my face. My expression didn't falter. My smile didn't waver. I didn't even flinch. Oliver didn't look at me again. The atmosphere in the room grew livelier. When it was time to cut the cake, chaos erupted. I used to love the chaos the most, smearing cake on others and then hiding behind Oliver for protection. Though he'd complain about how childish and annoying it was, he would occasionally shield me. This time, I stayed out of the commotion, but my close friends didn't spare me. When they chased after me with cake in hand, I laughed and dodged, always careful to steer clear of Oliver. With frosting smeared on my face and dress, I pleaded for mercy. Only then did they turn their attention to someone else. I wove through the crowd, heading out to the restroom to clean up. Just as I stepped out the door, Oliver called after me, Selena. I instinctively turned back. Chapter 2. The hallway light cast shadows across Oliver's face, obscuring much of his expression. We were close, yet I couldn't discern the emotions in his eyes. Do you need something? I asked. Oliver didn't reply immediately. His gaze lingered on my neck. You changed your necklace? I froze for a moment before quickly regaining my composure. Yeah, I did. The previous necklace had been a gift from him for my 18th birthday, one I had worn for 4 years. He curled his lips into a smile, one I couldn't quite decipher. Why didn't you come to the last gathering? The last gathering? I hesitated, feeling a sudden warmth rise to my ears. I had planned to go, but Bruno had asked me out at the last minute. The two of us ended up ditching the gathering altogether. Were you avoiding me? Oliver asked nonchalantly. I had something come up, so I couldn't make it, I replied. Oliver didn't seem entirely convinced but didn't press further. What do you think of Lily? She's beautiful, graceful, and clearly comes from a well-mannered family. I answered sincerely. Oliver stared at me without blinking. I think so too, which is why I'm suddenly thinking about getting married. That's great. Don't forget to send me an invitation, I said with a faint smile. Oliver chuckled. Sure, you'll be the first to get one. With that, he turned and walked away, seemingly losing interest in the conversation. I didn't linger either, hurrying to the restroom to clean the frosting off my face. But as I approached the restroom, I spotted Bruno standing there, smoking. Aren't you supposed to be on a business trip? I asked, surprised, while pulling out a tissue to wipe my face. Bruno stubbed out his cigarette and looked at me through the mirror. His expression, both amused and mocking, came back early. He said, didn't want to miss the show earlier. I turned, crumpling the tissue and tossing it at his face. What's that supposed to mean? He didn't dodge, letting it hit him, and even looked pleased with himself. What? I leave for just 2 days, and you two are already reigniting the old flame? Chapter 3. Reignite what? It never even ignited, I snapped, glaring at him. Bruno nodded. Fair enough. Then, suddenly, he took a step closer. Don't move. What's wrong? Bruno leaned in, his hand brushing off a smudge of frosting on my earlobe. Your dress is dirty too. I know. I got you a new one while I was away. Want to try it on? Following Bruno upstairs to one of the rooms, I felt a bit dazed. To be honest, Bruno and I had never gotten along. Since we were kids, he loved picking on me, teasing me while calling me spoiled and overly emotional. Later, when I started chasing after Oliver, everyone in our circle treated me as a source of entertainment. There wasn't any malice in it, really. But Bruno always seemed to despise the way I clung to Oliver. Over the years, we barely interacted. Then that night happened. By some twist of fate, we ended up in bed together, and everything became complicated. I deleted his number and resolved never to cross paths with him again. But it seemed Bruno had other ideas. The last time we met, I'd intended to set things straight between us. Yet somehow, we ended up in bed again, and to be honest, the second time was far better than the first. I couldn't deny it, I'd started craving it. I couldn't help glancing at Bruno in the elevator's mirror, a rebellious third-generation heir, born with annoyingly good looks. Unlike the other rich boys in our circle, he grew up in a military compound and spent years in the army. His physique was truly unmatched. I thought about his abs, his Adonis belt, and those solid muscles. I remembered clawing his back until it bled, cursing him through my tears for being a beast. And instead of getting mad, he clumsily tried to comfort me. The thought left me feeling inexplicably restless. Selena. Bruno suddenly pulled me close. What are you thinking about? Your ears are bright red. Thinking about your body? No. I mean, how you stay in shape. I stammered, covering my face in embarrassment. I couldn't bear to look at him again, but I made up my mind. Tonight would be the last time. Once it was over, I would make things clear, draw a line, cut all ties, and bury the secret between the two of us forever. Chapter 4. As soon as we stepped into the room from the elevator, Bruno pinned me against the back of the door. He had definitely gained some experience by now, this time. He remembered to cushion my back with his hand so I wouldn't get scraped against the door. Shower first. I managed to gasp, pushing him lightly between deep kisses. Bruno, however, seemed insatiable, his palm pressed against the small of my back, pulling me firmly into his arms with a slight force. He tilted his head down and kissed me again, the kiss deepening gradually. My legs began to feel weak, and I could barely balance on my high heels. Giving up, I kicked off my shoes and stepped on his feet. Bruno's breath hitched sharply, scooping me into his arms. He carried me toward the bathroom, his grip almost crushing me along the way. Warm water cascaded over us, soaking both our bodies entirely. Bruno cupped my face and kissed me again and again. His usual sharp, defiant features seemed softened, almost tender, under the stream of warm water. For a fleeting moment, as his intense gaze met mine, I felt something stir in my chest. Selena. He leaned his forehead against mine, his voice rough as he murmured my name. I felt dazed, my fragmented responses shaped by the sound of his voice. Fingers locked around mine. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Doesn't it feel better than last time?" I bit down on my lip, refusing to answer. Instead, my sharp nails dug deep into the firm muscles of his arm, leaving long, raw scratches across his skin. Chapter 5. The last time was over. Bruno carried me to the bathroom to wash up. I leaned against the edge of the bathtub, watching him shower. Hot water cascaded down his broad, muscular back, scattering into countless droplets. Maybe the experience was just too good, because the years of dislike I had for him seemed to have faded away. But I knew all too well, we weren't each other's type. Ending it sooner would be better for both of us. Bruno lifted me out of the bathtub, wrapped in a large bathrobe. I sat comfortably on the bathroom counter, letting him blow dry my hair. When he finished, he thoughtfully carried me back to the bedroom, resting my head on his shoulder. Half asleep, I murmured his name. Bruno. Yeah, let's not see each other again after tomorrow. Don't come looking for me anymore. I'll block you later on WeChat. Calls. QQ. Weibo. Block everything. Whatever happened between us, keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone. Bruno suddenly stopped in his tracks. Selena, he said, his voice heavy, sleepily. I lifted my eyelids to glance at him before drifting off completely. Bruno placed me gently on the bed. He stood by the bedside for a long moment before letting out a self-deprecating laugh. Selena, you really have no heart. But I didn't hear it. Chapter 6. The next morning, in front of Bruno, I deleted all his contact information. He sat on the couch without much expression, a cigarette between his fingers, though he didn't take a single drag, wearing the new dress he had bought for me. I smiled at him, pretending to be carefree. I'm leaving now. For the next month or so, Bruno and I didn't see each other again, but, strangely enough, Oliver seemed to appear around me more and more frequently. I began declining some unimportant gatherings with friends, trying to minimize any chance of running into him. until a friend's engagement party, where avoiding him was impossible. That day, Oliver drank a bit too much and, somehow, ended up acting out in front of everyone. Selena, do you have a problem with me? I was baffled. You're drunk. Oliver, go rest for a while. We've been friends for so many years, and now you're avoiding me like I did something wrong to you. I've just been busy lately. All right. Selena, I know what you're thinking. Oliver let out a cold laugh. But even if you're upset, it won't change anything. You can't compare to Lily. I couldn't help but laugh. Upset? Over what? You're really drunk, I said, standing up to leave. But Oliver grabbed my arm. Didn't you used to get so jealous? Why aren't you jealous this time? Is it because you've finally realized it's pointless to make a scene? I frowned and yanked my arm free. That's when I noticed Bruno standing not far away, watching the scene unfold with an amused smirk. That infuriating, entertained expression of his was maddening. Fuming, I pulled out my phone and opened WeChat. Bruno had sent me several friend requests before, which I had ignored, but now, I accepted his request. Then, I sent him a message. Want to meet? Bruno hesitated for half a minute. Yes, same room as last time. After sending that, I immediately blocked him again. Bruno. Chapter 7. As the engagement party wound down, I told a friend I was leaving early, grabbed my bag, and slipped out. Oliver asked where I was going, but I ignored him. Someone as prideful as him wouldn't lower himself to beg for an answer. On my way out of the banquet hall, I heard a few friends calling out to Bruno. Bruno, you're leaving too? Didn't you say we'd keep drinking later? I've got something personal to take care of. I'll host next time, he replied. Oliver stood up, feigning an attempt to stop him. What personal business could be more important than a friend's engagement party? What's with you disappearing all the time lately? Hidden behind the lush greenery, I watched the group. Bruno, dressed in a formal black suit for the engagement, stood next to Oliver. He was taller by a bit. Unlike Oliver's slender, almost frail frame, Bruno's physique was built through years of military training. There was a palpable tension in his presence, a raw physicality. That phrase slim in clothes, muscular without seemed made just for him. I couldn't help but think back to the nights we spent together. How easily Bruno could lift me with one arm. How he carried me from the bedroom to the bathroom without stopping once. And then, the memory of how I couldn't hold back, leaving a trail of dampness down his waist and abs, made my cheeks burn all over again. I raised my hand and pressed the back of it against my flushed face, trying to cool down. When I looked at Bruno again, he seemed to sense my gaze and glanced in my direction. Instinctively, I stepped back, my heart racing and my face growing inexplicably warmer. It's something important, Bruno said, his tone firm. Very important. Oliver grew increasingly curious. What's so important? You're being so serious about it. Are you in love or something? Yeah, a couple of times I've seen you glued to your phone. Seriously? You're dating? Who is it? Someone we know? Bruno smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. For some reason, I thought that smile of his seemed a bit lonely. I'll tell you all about it some other time. She's a pretty reserved person and doesn't want to go public yet. I'd rather not say too much, or she might get upset if she finds out. Oliver gave him a thoughtful look. Really? I haven't seen you with any girls around lately. It's recent, Bruno said, fixing Oliver with a steady gaze. When she's ready to go public, I'll bring her to meet you all. All right then. We won't interrupt your big plans. Oliver smirked mischievously. The iron tree has finally bloomed. Huh? Then he leaned in and lowered his voice. Have you, crossed that line yet? Bruno's expression turned a few shades more serious. I don't like talking about those things. It's disrespectful to her. Oliver looked slightly embarrassed. Bruno didn't let the awkward moment linger. I'm heading out in a couple of days. It's on me. Let's meet up again then. Sure, but bring your girlfriend next time. Yeah, we're all curious about her. Bruno nodded with a polite smile before turning to leave. He walked out through the revolving door, his figure vanishing from sight. As he left, someone casually commented, "Doesn't it seem like the ones missing from these gatherings lately are always Selena and Bruno? They're not involved, are they?" Oliver's face darkened with a flicker of annoyance. What nonsense are you spouting? Bruno's hated Selena since we were kids. You all know how he is, he can't stand girls who cling too much. That's true, those two never seem to see eye to eye. The conversation quickly shifted to another topic. But Oliver couldn't shake the heavy, cloud-like weight in his chest. He glanced out the glass doors. Bruno was long gone. Selena had left early too. The thought gnawed at him, and he couldn't help but piece things together. It was true, every recent gathering had been missing both of them. But maybe it was just a coincidence. Oliver reassured himself. After all, he'd known Bruno for years, they were like brothers. He was sure of one thing, Bruno and Selena absolutely couldn't stand each other. What Oliver didn't know was that the two people he thought despised each other were now heading to the same hotel, just a few steps apart. Chapter 8. When I came out of the shower, Bruno was already sitting on the couch in the living room. There's another bathroom. Why don't you go shower there? I asked casually while drying my hair. Bruno leaned back against the sofa, his gaze fixed on me. Didn't you say we wouldn't be in touch anymore? I glanced at him. You can leave now if you want. The corner of his lips tugged into a self-deprecating smile. But he stood up anyway. He walked over, took the towel from my hands, and started drying my hair. My hair is long, and I always get impatient trying to dry it myself after washing. If he was willing to help, I was happy to let him. Once my hair was mostly dry, Bruno turned off the blow dryer. I'm going to shower. I replied lazily, curling up on the couch and turning on the TV. But before heading to the bathroom, Bruno leaned down and kissed the corner of my lips. Wait for me. About 15 minutes later, the sound of running water stopped. Soon after, Bruno pushed open the bathroom door and stepped out. A towel was loosely tied around his lean waist, accentuating his broad shoulders and narrow hips, a perfect inverted triangle. His chest and abs were impeccably sculpted. Long legs, firm glutes, and a healthy, sun-kissed tan gave his skin a captivating allure. Even though I'd seen his body multiple times, I still felt a little shy whenever I saw him like this. I couldn't help but steal a few greedy glances before averting my gaze. Bruno seemed to notice, the corner of his lips curving into a faint smirk. He casually rubbed his hair with a towel before tossing it aside and walking straight toward me. Before I could react, he lifted me off the couch. Bruno, startled. I clung tightly to his neck, glaring at him, but his eyes sparkled with genuine amusement. Selena, what? What position do you want tonight? His question was teasing, accompanied by a kiss brushing against my ear. His breath tangled intimately with mine, creating a lingering sense of tenderness. When I spoke again, my voice had softened. As if you know that many. Bruno laughed, clearly enjoying himself. I've been practicing since last time. Shameless. Of all things to practice. Want to test it out? I tried to keep my composure, but my heart was already racing wildly. Sure, but if I'm not satisfied, I'll find someone else. Before I could finish, Bruno silenced me with a sudden, forceful kiss. The unfinished sentence dissolved into a muffled murmur, swallowed by his deep kiss. By the time we reached the bed, he pinned me down onto the soft mattress. The belt of my robe came undone with a quick pull. His hands, roughened and calloused from years of training in the military, were stronger than before. I couldn't stop a soft cry from escaping. His breathing grew erratic, heavier. Selena. His eyes were filled with desire, his voice hoarse. Why does it feel so different this time? Dazed. I looked at him, unsure of what he meant, but it seemed he couldn't handle the way I was looking at him. His scorching kisses trailed downward, stopping at the peak of my chest. A breeze stirred the white curtains, lifting their tassels in the air. As the tassels swayed, my slender waist arched like a drawn bow, instinctively responding to him. Selena, do you like it? I shook my head, biting my lip to keep from answering. Yet tears, purely reflexive, welled up at the corners of my eyes. Bruno didn't push too hard. He simply repeated the question, and when I didn't answer, he pressed deeper, forcing a reaction. Chapter 9. Selena, are you still going to block me? My choked sobs were shattered by the rhythm of his thrusts. No, I won't block you. My fingers clung tightly to his forearm, my nails nearly digging into his firm, Warm skin, pleasure, once tasted, becomes addictive. And Bruno was truly a good student. Every time we were together, the experience was better, much better than the last. But now, he refused to let me have it all at once. He teased me relentlessly, dull blades carving through my sanity, leaving me aching and desperate. Now tell me, do you like it? I didn't answer, so he thrust deeper, harder. I like it. I like it. I gasped. Selena, will you be with me? My eyes shot open in shock. Bruno? He didn't respond, only looked down at me from above. Those rebellious, untamed eyes I used to despise so much now seemed as deep as an abyss. They were filled with a restrained intensity, carrying emotions I couldn't decipher. You've always hated me, haven't you? If I hated you, would I come back to you again and again? He lowered his gaze and smiled faintly, even with the spring flood threatening to burst. He held himself back with excruciating control. Selena, I'll ask you just once, will you be with me? I felt like I was losing my mind, my body, my spirit, my rationality, everything was teetering on the edge of collapse. In the end, it was desire that consumed it all. Yes, Bruno, Selena. His kiss fell gently. I'll give you everything. Selena, whatever you want. It's yours. Chapter 10. By the time everything ended in an exhilarating release, the sky was completely dark. My phone was filled with missed calls and WeChat messages. Half of them were from Oliver. I didn't reply. After a moment's thought, I blocked him on all platforms. Shortly after, Bruno's phone started ringing. He picked up, and Oliver's voice came through clearly. Bruno, where are you? Bruno reached out and pulled me into his arms. I was utterly spent, lying limp and motionless against his chest. I'm with my girlfriend. What's up? It's nothing. Really, Selena's phone has been off, and no one can reach her. I'm not that worried, but everyone else is pretty concerned about her. You live near her place. Did you see her come home? Bruno glanced down at me, and I held a finger to my lips in a should gesture. Yeah, I saw her. She's home. All right. Then, I won't interrupt your date. Oliver teased him for a bit before finally hanging up. Bruno set his phone aside and then picked up mine. Unlock it. For what? Take me off your block list. Reluctantly, I unlocked my phone and watched as he removed every block I'd set. A mix of complicated, inexplicable emotions churned in my chest. To be honest, I didn't really want to block him in the first place. Keeping things as they were between us, this arrangement wasn't bad at all. After all, it felt amazing every single time. Selena, what now? Stop only looking for me when you're in the mood. And don't forget what you promised earlier. I hesitated, fumbling for a response before finally blurting out. You actually believe what people say in bed? Are you dumb? Bruno let out a laugh, seemingly both amused and annoyed by me. All right, if you don't want to keep your word. He leaned down, pinching my chin. I'll head to your house tomorrow and have a little chat with your parents about what we've been up to. Bruno, I panicked immediately. If my parents found out about me and Bruno, they'd drag out the household registry and force us to get married on the spot. All right, I get it. I'll keep my word, but can you just give me some time? Sure, when you've thought it through and are ready to make things official, we'll continue. I'm not that desperate. Bruno bit my lips lightly. No, you're not that desperate. Except you make me change the bedsheets every time. Bruno, mortified and furious, I bit his jaw in retaliation. It wasn't my fault he was so wicked, always teasing me just enough to drive me crazy. If it weren't for that, how could I ever react so intensely? Chapter 11. Not long after, another friend returned from studying abroad and organized a gathering. For once, Bruno, Oliver, and I were all there. Of course, Oliver brought Lily along, as usual. As for Bruno and me, our seats were thoughtfully placed far apart by our friends. After all, back when I was chasing after Oliver, Bruno's disdain for me was so obvious even a dog could see it. As the drinks flowed and the atmosphere grew livelier, someone turned to Oliver. Oliver, when are we going to drink at your wedding? Oliver glanced at me briefly, almost imperceptibly, before pulling Lily close in a show of affection. Soon. We're already planning it. Everyone instinctively looked my way. I didn't even lift an eyebrow, focusing instead on savoring my soup. The dishes tonight were excellent, with several of my favorites on the menu. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Bruno. Want to go for a walk later to digest? Where to? The lake. There's an artificial one nearby. It's nice. Sure. I was feeling a bit too full, and Oliver and Lily's over-the-top display of affection was making me nauseous. A walk sounded like a good idea. Let's go separately. You go first, and I'll find you later. Bruno didn't reply, but a moment later, he got up, cigarette pack in hand, going out for a smoke. Need some air, he said casually, about 10 minutes after he left. I stood up too. I'm heading to the restroom. Everyone was caught up in conversation and laughter, so no one noticed the details. But what I didn't realize was that as I left, Oliver watched me for several moments, and as soon as the door closed behind me, he stood up as well. Chapter 12. Bruno texted me, saying he was waiting downstairs. I didn't go to the restroom but headed straight for the elevator. Downstairs, I walked through the lobby and out the door, spotting him standing under a tree, smoking. When he saw me, he stubbed out his cigarette. The night breeze was slightly chilly, and I instinctively hugged my arms. Bruno came over and pulled me into his arms without a word. He leaned down and kissed me naturally, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. I didn't resist, tilting my face up to meet his kiss. We kissed deeply, completely lost in each other, oblivious to the figure standing on the steps not far behind us. Oliver stood there, his face dark and expression unreadable, watching the scene unfold. Not long after that night, news broke that Oliver and Lily were getting married. Shortly after the announcement, invitations were sent out to everyone in our circle. I received one too, hand-delivered by Oliver himself. Taking the invitation from him, I congratulated him sincerely. Congratulations on your happy ending. I'll be there on your wedding day. But Oliver didn't look particularly happy. Selena, to be honest, I never thought I'd end up marrying Lily, he said, his voice low. In fact, I used to think I'd eventually give in to you, that you'd wear me down. There's no need to talk about that now. I cut him off, smiling lightly. I was young and naive back then, and I did a lot of stupid things. Don't take it to heart, it's all in the past. The last trace of a smile disappeared from Oliver's face. Selena, I'm not joking, I'm really getting married. I know. Congratulations, I replied, still smiling. Oliver's gaze turned cold, and he let out a bitter laugh. You know, out of all of us, I always thought Bruno would be the first to get married. I instinctively asked, why? Oliver stared at me intently. Because I've known for a long time that Bruno had someone he liked very much. He told me he planned to marry her as soon as he reached the legal age. But something happened, and they didn't end up together. Now, it seems I've beaten him to it. I froze, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside me. But in the end, they all condensed into a bitter ache. No wonder Bruno had never been caught up in scandals over the years. It turned out he'd always had someone in his heart. If it hadn't been for that drunken mistake the two of us made, our lives would never have intersected like this. I don't even like him. I've always liked gentle, refined men, calm and elegant. Bruno and I have been at odds since we were kids. I've always disliked him. But why? Upon hearing that he once had someone he deeply cared for, does it hurt so much? Selena, Oliver said, gesturing toward the invitation in my hand. Make sure you check the time. Don't be late. Chapter 13. That day, I went out drinking with my best friend. She thought I was devastated by the news of Oliver and Lily's engagement. But that wasn't it at all. The thought of their marriage didn't stir even the slightest ripple in my heart. All I could think about was Bruno, about the girl he liked. What kind of person was she? What was Bruno like when he liked someone? If that girl came back, would he immediately surrender and get back together with her? I even found myself imagining absurd scenarios of them being together. I wasn't sure if I was just unwilling to let go of his body, or if I had started to develop feelings for him. After my best friend left, I called Bruno. When he drove over to pick me up, I was too drunk to stand, obediently sitting on a bench by the roadside. waiting for him. I watched as his car sped toward me. I watched as his tall, straight figure stepped out of the car and walked toward me. I watched his face, strong yet strikingly handsome, and suddenly, I felt an overwhelming urge to cry. By the time Bruno stood in front of me, my face was already streaked with tears, but he didn't wipe them away for me. He didn't coax me gently, the way he did when we were in bed. He just stood there, his expression unreadable, silently watching me. The grievance in my heart surged like a fountain. Bruno. I choked out his name, reaching a trembling hand toward him. His expression softened, just barely. After a few seconds, he finally raised his hand and brushed away the tears clinging to my lashes. Selena, why are you crying? I didn't know how to explain. I didn't know how to put into words the chaos of emotions swirling inside me, so I just leaned against his chest, crying silently for a long time. Eventually, Bruno seemed to grow a little helpless. All right, that's enough. Stop crying. I'll take you home. Take me to your place. I had never stayed the night at his place before, but this time, I wanted to. I wanted to lie in his bed with him. I wanted to spend the entire night together. But all these thoughts, I couldn't muster the courage to say them out loud. Chapter 14. Bruno's house was large, with a spacious and minimalist layout. The bathroom is yours to use freely, he said. Don't go into my study. You can do as you please with the other rooms. He handed me a pair of new slippers. Looking at the oversized men's slippers that resembled tiny boats, I couldn't help but ask, don't you have women's slippers? No. Have you never brought a girlfriend home? You don't already know if I've dated or not. He wasn't wrong. We'd grown up together, after all, but everyone has secrets, and Bruno was no exception. As I changed into the slippers, I casually asked, so, have you ever liked someone? Bruno folded his arms, leaned against the wall, and smiled slightly. Yes. I bent down to slip on the slippers, but his answer made me lose my balance and nearly fall. Bruno reached out to steady me. How much did you drink? Not much. I straightened up but stumbled again. Without hesitation, Bruno scooped me up. Go shower first. When the first round was over, I lay sprawled on his bed, scrolling through my phone. Bruno had gone to get me some water. When he came back, I was looking at my WeChat moments. There was a flood of red invitations, friends showing off their wedding invites. Messages popped up every now and then, mostly asking if I was going to reconcile with Oliver. Bruno's face darkened, and he snatched my phone away. Come drink water. I stayed where I was, refusing to move. Feed me. Bruno didn't object. He picked me up and helped me drink. Then, without warning, he pressed me back onto the bed. This time, he was rougher. I quickly reached my limit. Bruno, are you going to go after him? Who? You know who, Oliver. He's getting married, isn't he? Why would I go after him? Didn't you used to love him? Weren't you ready to die for him every day? Bruno. Selena, answer me now. Are you going to go after him? His tone was harsh. Bruno, can you ask me that without pinning me down? I frowned, my voice breaking as his movements overwhelmed me. No. Answer me first. Will you go after him? He asked me again, and with every question, his intensity grew. I couldn't hold on anymore, my voice trembling as I gasped. No. I won't go after him. Remember what you said. Bruno, be gentler. I can't. Bruno lowered his head and kissed me deeply, intensely. His stamina was astounding. I felt like a tiny boat floating in a raging tide, tossed and slammed by wave after wave, nearly coming apart. Chapter 15. Maybe it was because Bruno had been too rough that night, and the condom tore. The date of Oliver and Lily's wedding hadn't even arrived yet. But I found out I was pregnant. Staring at the report in my hands, I felt completely stunned. Oliver had said Bruno liked someone. Bruno himself admitted he had someone he liked. There was no future for us. There couldn't be. What we had was nothing more than a way to pass the time, to chase away loneliness, to satisfy physical needs. With Bruno's personality, he would only marry the woman he loved. So, he wouldn't want this child. But just the thought of that made tears fall uncontrollably. I turned off my phone and stayed in my apartment for 2 whole days. Finally, I made up my mind. While it was still just a tiny embryo, the best choice was to let it go. But as soon as I was hooked up to the 4 at the hospital, Bruno stormed into the room. He held my surgical consent form in his hand. I had never seen his face so grim. Those sharp, rebellious eyes were filled with frost, colder than I'd ever seen. Selena. When he said my name, his voice was hoarse and trembling. That frost gradually melted, but it turned into raw pain and disappointment. Why don't you want it, Bruno? I sat up in shock. Selena. Why don't you want it? Bruno gripped my shoulders, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. My tears suddenly fell. Bruno, I just didn't want to cause you unnecessary trouble. Is it because you didn't want to trouble me? Or is there another reason? Before I could respond, Bruno laughed bitterly. You already know Oliver and Lily aren't getting married, don't you? That's why you decided not to keep the baby, isn't it? What are you talking about? I stared at him, confused. But I won't let you have your way. Bruno's eyes were filled with a fiery intensity. I already called home. My parents know you're pregnant, and they know I'm going to marry you. Marry? That's right. Marry. Bruno cupped my face, wiping away the tears streaming from my eyes. One by one, you gave me your word. You promised to be with me. You promised to make our relationship public. Selena, you can't go back on your word. But what if the woman you love comes back someday? My tears wouldn't stop. I looked up at him, my face wet and trembling. Bruno, I just don't want you to hate me. I don't want her to come back one day, only for me to be in the place that was meant for her. I don't want you to resent me. That's why I thought, before I fall in love with you, before the baby becomes more than just a tiny, unfeeling embryo, ending things now would hurt less. The woman I love? Yes, I asked you. And you said you had someone you loved. Then why didn't you ask me who it is? Who is it? Bruno cupped my face and suddenly smiled. Selena, go to my study. You'll find the answer there. Chapter 16. I found myself back at Bruno's house once again. This time, he handed me a pair of new slippers, women's slippers. They were pink, cute, and just my size. I thought you didn't let me into your study. I didn't before. Now you can. Why the change? You'll understand once you go in. Bruno seemed a little uneasy. I'll head downstairs for a bit to grab something, he said, adding, be careful. Don't trip or hurt yourself. Got it. Got it, I replied, waving him off. Bruno's study was quite spacious, filled with books arranged neatly on shelves. But what stood out was his desk and the wall behind it. The wall was covered with photos, large and small. It didn't take much attention to notice the common thread among them. I was in every single one, from kindergarten, through elementary school, all the way to when we grew older, and the photos became less frequent. On his desk sat a pink, rhinestone-studded photo frame that screamed teenage sentimentality. Inside the frame was a picture of 2 kids. The girl was me, with 2 oversized bows in my hair, smiling in a completely unflattering way. The boy was Bruno, taller than me by a good half a head, striking a pose in front of the camera. The frame was a Children's Day gift I had given him. The back of the frame had a crooked line of writing, wishing Selena and Bruno friendship forever. I couldn't help but laugh. But as I laughed, tears started falling. For some reason, I thought of the time in middle school when I read The Smiling, Proud Wanderer by Jean Young. I'd been so upset then, wondering why the little apprentice sister had suddenly fallen for someone else. Why she would abandon her amazing senior brother and even lose her life for another man. But now it felt like I had become that little apprentice sister, drifting further away from Bruno, chasing after Oliver like a fool. And yet, unlike her, I was infinitely luckier. I hadn't walked blindly into ruin, and I hadn't missed the person who had quietly loved me all along. Chapter 17. When Bruno returned carrying several boxes of supplements, I was sitting in his chair, reading his diary. This idiot, when we were kids, he used to bully me on purpose just to make me cry. Turns out, it was Oliver who gave him the idea. He told Bruno that the way boys show they like a girl is by teasing her and making her cry. As he grew older, he regretted it. But by then, It was too late, I had already fallen for the gentle and refined Oliver. It turned out he had never hated me. What he despised was the Selena who revolved around Oliver, whose emotions were controlled by him, who had completely lost her sense of self. I didn't dare imagine how much it must have hurt Bruno to watch all of this. He had thought about giving up, about leaving for good. He had considered trying to like someone else, to settle for what was easy. But in the end, he couldn't. The night I got drunk and he took me away was the only time in his life that he acted recklessly, throwing everything on the line. On that page of his diary, there were only 2 words, written boldly and clearly: no regrets. I closed the diary. Bruno pushed open the door to his study. When he saw me, the tips of his ears flushed faintly red. He cleared his throat before asking, "What do you want for lunch?" Leaning back in the chair, I reached out my hand to him. Bruno walked toward me, step by step. He took my hand in his, then knelt down, gently pressing his face against my stomach. "Selena, is there really a baby in here?" "My baby?" I couldn't help but laugh. As I leaned down to kiss him, tears fell from my eyes and landed on his face. "In a few months, you'll feel him move." We held each other like that, neither of us willing to break the peaceful happiness of that moment. Chapter 18. The day before Bruno and I were to register our marriage, Oliver suddenly came to find me. By then, I already knew about his breakup with Lily. To be precise, Lily was the one who initiated it. After all, no woman could tolerate being with someone who treated something as serious as marriage like a joke. The truth was, he never actually intended to marry Lily. Even the invitations were just a spur-of-the-moment plan to provoke me. And the reason for all this? That night, he had seen Bruno and me kissing. How ridiculous. It was from that moment that Oliver began to realize, little by little, that he cared about me far more than he had ever thought. I listened to him tirelessly recount the entire journey of his feelings over the years, speaking with such clarity and conviction, as though trying to persuade me. But I truly didn't care, not even a little. In the early stages of pregnancy, I was constantly sleepy. Halfway through his story, I started to feel drowsy. "Selena, are you tired?" Oliver looked at me in disbelief. He knew how much I used to love listening to him speak, admiring his eloquence and refined knowledge. But that was the past. I had long since realized that men like him couldn't compare to someone like Bruno, a man of action. I honestly didn't know what I'd been thinking back then. Stretching lazily, I yawned. "Yeah, first trimester stuff, it makes you sleepy all the time." Oliver was completely dumbfounded. "First trimester? What is the first trimester?" "Wait, you're pregnant? How can you be pregnant? Why couldn't I be pregnant?" I found his reaction unbearably noisy. "If you don't have anything else to say, you should leave." "I want to sleep." "Selena, explain this to me. How did you end up pregnant? How could this happen so soon? You and Bruno, have you two been involved this whole time?" Oliver must have been thinking about all those times when Bruno and I were conveniently absent at the same gatherings. He completely lost his composure. "Yeah, we've been together for a while," I said casually. "But what does that have to do with you? After all, we never dated." I stretched again, feeling the fatigue settle in. "I'm heading to bed now. Don't let me keep you." "Selena, you've liked me for so many years, I can't believe you'd fall for someone else so quickly." Oliver's face was full of resentment. "If this is just because you're pregnant." "Of course it's not just because of the pregnancy. I just really like Bruno. I liked him even when we were kids. I just lost my mind for a few years. But now I've found my way back." I stood up and sincerely advised him. "Honestly, Lily is a great girl. Oliver, you should seriously consider getting her back. Otherwise, you'll regret it someday." "Selena, don't come looking for me anymore." Bruno's very possessive and gets jealous easily. Chapter 19. As expected, when Bruno found out Oliver had come to see me, he was sulking with jealousy all night. I spent ages kissing and hugging him, trying to coax him out of it. But suddenly, Bruno got up and went to the bathroom. When he came out, he wouldn't let me touch him. After all, it was still the first trimester of my pregnancy. Not even 3 months yet. The doctor had strictly instructed us to avoid intimacy during this time. Originally, My mom wanted me to stay at her house for a while, but Bruno absolutely refused and reassured both our families multiple times before they agreed to let me stay with him. At first, we started off sleeping under separate blankets, behaving ourselves, but soon enough, I couldn't resist climbing into his blanket, craving his kisses and cuddles. Selena, we really can't do this right now. I'm not asking for that. I just want you to hold me. I wriggled in his arms for a while until I found the most comfortable position and closed my eyes contentedly. But Bruno was clearly struggling. Selena, like this. I can't sleep at all. Relax. Bruno, how am I supposed to relax? He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his warm breath tickling my ear. With the person I love lying in my arms like this, even a saint wouldn't be able to. So what do you want to do? Bruno held me tightly, burying his face against my neck. After a long moment, he mumbled softly, "Let me just hold you for a little while." Selena. I reached out and stroked him, feeling my heart tremble. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. Does it feel unbearable? I'll take another cold shower in a bit. Bruno. Yeah, aren't you forgetting to say something to me? What? I love you. Bruno let out a low laugh, full of joy. Selena. I love you. I hummed softly. All right. I love you too. And after saying that, I couldn't help but laugh. Under the warmth of the night, we held each other close under the blanket, laughing together. It felt like we'd gone back to our carefree childhood, when Selena and Bruno were just two innocent kids. But now, as adults, our love would last a lifetime.